Today is the third day of the February 88 7-day retreat. And I'll read again some notes I've made of questions or composites of questions. That partly have resulted from what we have talked about before. So if one happens to be coming freshly into a retreat, it may be possible, I'm not quite sure, it may be possible to listen, if one wishes to tapes of previous talks. Write a note to the coordinators if you're interested. And again, it may not be necessary. Every talk may stand on its own, I don't know. Here is a response or combination of responses. I'm confused about what method to use now. I have used different meditation methods in the past. And while here, I really want to use whatever method you're using here. So do I keep asking, what is it? I've heard you talk about wondering when something comes up, what is it? So do I keep asking, what is it? I've been doing that, and it seems very arduous. Whatever comes up, to ask, what is it? Is that the right way? Is that what you're talking about? And then in all this ardor and efforts, really very exhausting by the end of the day, maybe there is a moment of rest or quiet. Do I have to immediately ask, what is it? And people have asked, what do you mean when you say being with something, remaining with something, not running away? How do I do that? One person said, I want to dissolve my anger or my frustration. I don't really like it. I want to be done with it, resolve it, dissolve it. How do I do it? I won't read the other question. We'll read those later because we've got a lot here. Does one realize how hung up we are, how addicted, we could almost use that word, to methods? Ways of dealing with our problems, other people, situations, ourselves. And the motive for that is to be rid of problems. to get quiet and peace. To solve what is problematical in our life, in ourselves, in other people. And all we know and all that we've ever been taught or have experienced ourselves is using remedies or methods, trainings, to get rid of our problems, our pains. Which is, isn't it, away from the problem toward the solution. Craving that solution of the problem, of the pain. Imagining how wonderful it would be to live in peace and quiet and harmony. And the attractiveness of that goal. And because of the attractiveness of the goal, the willingness to seek out a method, a system, and to submit to it in order to get that state that seems so desirable, so taking care of what seems so difficult to live with. But we're not offering any methods or techniques because there may not be any to resolve our problems. What may be needed is to understand these problems in a new way, not in a prejudicial or traditional or conventional, conditioned way, but to meet our problems, which is ourself, afresh. Which includes our desire for methods, our desire for imagined states, to meet that desire, to meet the frustration, and to understand how it comes about, to wonder about that, how this whole problem of myself arises. Not in the past, when I was little, or going back to the beginning of human beings, Adam and Eve, or the first hominoids, but as it arises now, because it arises all the time, freshly. This problem of me and my insufficiencies, my wants, my lacks, my pains, my pleasures and desires. To see it being born freshly, this moment, as it comes up in thought and image and fantasy, and all the physical accompaniment, the knot in the throat, the chest, the stomach, the back, the forehead, whole head, the tensions, the excitement, shortness of breath or pounding hard, to be intimate with that, to let go of seeking solutions and imagining resolved states. Let go of the memory of promises of those states, and let the energy be here, the energy of attention, awareness, listening, looking, with this thing, this process, which is so problematical for us. One may want to be rid of anger, dissolve it, be free of it, be kindly, rather than crotchety. But how does anger arise? Why does it arise time and time and time again? One doesn't really know because one doesn't pay attention. One is carried away with anger. The anger is all-consuming. Maybe not a bit of attention or awareness in it. And later on, one is sort of faced with the broken pieces. Remorse, hurt feelings, and the person one may have hurt, or consumed with rationalizations for one's anger, justification, or self-deprecation. Why did I get angry again after I've made all these resolutions not to be angry anymore? But why did we get angry? Why do we get angry? What is the instant by instant process that produces this state, which is such a detrimental, destructive state to our relationship with ourselves, with each other, and throughout the world? Is one interested to really find out, be intimate how this whole thing happens? One's ways are, one doesn't get one's way, one is not talked to the way one would like to be talked to. One is put down, one's pad is invaded. Maybe callously, one's psychological or physical pad. Or the person who says something reminds one of somebody else who has done one a lot of hurt in the past, humiliated one. There's association going on, there's a lot of memory, instant memory going on. And there is this image of oneself that one is so totally identified with. The image of who one is or would like to be, how one would like to be treated, talked to, dealt with, and the transgression of that. And therefore this welling up of hurt and anger, which is a pouring out of chemical substances in the body, which mobilize muscle power, maybe raise the blood pressure, one can feel blood rushing to the head, maybe narrowing down, one feels tight in the throat. One can't hear openly and see clearly. There's a narrowing throughout the organism and the sense organs. And a deeply seated, uncontrollable impulse to lash out or run away, to give back in kind. You too. Or, not just or, that is in addition, remembering this. The hurt self remembers. The brain records what has happened. Because the brain's function in its long evolution is to take care that this organism survives. And it has learned to take care that the psychological image also survives because there's attachment to it. It's taken for real. And the same mechanisms that are triggered to take care of physical survival, the ability to attack or flee, to run or jump, the same mechanisms are mobilized to take care of the survival of this psychological me, which has been built up over years and years of remembrances, of experiences, what we were told we are. We talked in great detail about that yesterday, how we begin to form images about ourselves by what we're told we are, what we are told we should be, what we're threatened with that we shouldn't be like. And then, of course, of all of our reading of stories of heroes, heroines, and wanting to be like them. The imagination being able to produce innumerable models of what we would like to be like, and then assuming these identities, identifying with these images as me, that's me, we feel. And if someone doesn't accept it, or puncture the image, hurt it, insult it, then we feel angry or depressed. Different emotions to different qualities of responses to us. So can one begin to understand that, to really have insight into this process, which happens how often? A day, a week, a year? So innumerably often that one should be able to really catch it once, see it, understand it. Not ex post facto. This is what usually happens. Afterwards, we may become aware of what happened, but then the thing is already over. We haven't caught it right as it happened. Therefore, the memory is not accurate. Memory is according to our perceptions, which are distorted by the images we have, the wishes and the defenses. But even if we become aware afterwards, one can still wonder, let that whole scene come up again in the mind, as it will. And very important, what does one do when a scene comes up in the mind in which one was so hurt, so angry? Does it just keep on going like a tape running or a phonograph running over and over and over again with the same remembrance, the same emotions being triggered, the same desire to pay back or to lash out, and maybe in one's fantasy doing that, which one doesn't dare do in actuality? One may be too shy, too inhibited, but in one's fantasy one can wring somebody else's throat. Or will there be some wondering about the process itself, not being on that carousel, being whipped around by it, but stopping to watch, to look, to listen to what's going on? Because there's a deep need to understand. Not just to play over and to emote again and again because it feels so good, or has such a momentum and energy in it. But to wonder whether it is at all possible to get to the root of it, to the root of hurt, to the root of fear, to the root of anger. The root meaning what gets hurt? What is afraid? I'm not saying make that into a practice, because then it becomes a mechanical, repetitive thing, gaining importance in itself, but not shedding light. It is a question that doesn't ask for soothing, it doesn't ask for any kind of repetition, it asks for the truth. What gets hurt? We get hurt over and over and over again. We have been hurt over and over in the past. We get hurt in the present, and will we continue to get hurt and hurt and hurt in the future? As individuals, as groups, as nations. Building up of anger and aggression and defense. Personally and globally. We may march for peace, march for nuclear banishment of nuclear weapons, feel very good about doing something for humanity, but inside we get hurt and angry, and we're defensive and aggressive toward each other, actually or in fantasy. So does it become clear that that something has to be resolved on this individual level, in myself? To find out, to have an open question whether anger and hurt can end as it comes up. The triggering happens so fast, the response is as quick as electricity travels along these nervous connections. And that's fast. Chemicals released. But that doesn't mean that there can't be attention as lightning, seeing what's going on. Not controlling, not stopping, not thinking, now which method will I use to cope with this. It's just attention. Awareness, listening, use whatever word you will. It is a state of mind which opens up to what is going on without having any idea or program to stop it, to change it, to condemn it, to accept it. It's just, what's going on? And then quiet. Not knowing. Not knowing is very important. Not say, oh, this is my old anger again. Or this is him again doing this to me. That is recognition, which means the past is in control. The past that knows what is going to happen, what happened, how he is, how I am. And all the associative network is bleeping. But to wonder, you'll say now, well, how do I do that? I don't know how you do it. There's no how in that. It's just attention. Attention isn't how do I do it, it's just listening, wondering, feeling the tremendous drive to go on with something that wants fulfillment, pleasurable or hurtful, painful or pleasurable. Every habit has its own autonomous energy to roll off, to keep it going, to feel that. Like being in a stream with a tremendous current, aware of the current and listening to it. Aware maybe of the desire to flow with it. And if that desire is strong, to flow with the expression of the anger, or the movement of the pleasure that one is experiencing, maybe in a dream or fantasy or in what one is hearing or saying, if that momentum is very great to go on with it, to feel more of it, to get more of the release or the strokes or whatever, then the awareness will be flooded over, it'll be gone. As sort of maybe a thought like, leave me alone, I don't want to look. So, how clear is this instant of attention? It may be clear, but then the thoughts come up. We talk to ourselves, we evaluate what is happening, we tell ourselves in words, in punchlines, what it is that's going on for us, and these punchlines affect us. I'm treated as a doormat. People bring that up a lot, that analogy. And if one says to oneself, I'm being treated as a doormat, that does something to one, doesn't it? And it has lost any kind of factualness. What really happened? Can one look again, listen again to the facts, and not slip into this habit of representing to oneself in loaded terms what is happening to us? One has to become aware of that this is going on, and then abstain from it, seeing the effect it has and the clouding of what really happened. Words have tremendous impact on our whole organism and mind. Mind is not separate from the organism. So going back to the way we started, can there be a real understanding and insight into how we thirst for solutions away from being intimate with a problem, being exposed to what happens, even if it doesn't reveal pleasant things about ourselves. It reveals what is there. And to see what is there, we have to put all images aside about what we are, because they cloud the vision, they plug the ears. How do I do that? How do I listen? There's listening. There's no how. There's an intense interest, concern with how I live as a human being from moment to moment. Because there is understanding of the connection between the way I live and relate, talk, act, with how all human beings relate and talk and act all over the world. There's a connection. We affect each other. Like a pebble dropped into a large body of water. The ripples that go from that dropping of a pebble travel everywhere. Along the water, then to the shore. And the sky touches the water. There's no gap. So I'm deeply concerned. How do we live? We have lived in unspeakable sorrow. Human beings have. Since time immemorial. Sorrow of, it seems, eternal conflict within and without. Conflict within ourselves, with each other, and globally, worldwide. "22 wars," I read recently. 22 wars were going on last year. The statistician who put that together said this is a record. And millions of people killed in those 22 wars which went on last year. And almost $2 million spent per minute by human beings all over the globe on armaments. Every minute, $2 million on weapons to kill each other. That arouses my concern about how I live. Because there's a deep feeling that we are connected with each other. And maybe this concern, interest, that word doesn't go deep enough, but it's not a bad word. That may at times make one stop and look and listen. What goes on to the battlefield inside. And wonder whether it can end, whether it can stop, not by any magic means, but just wonder if it can end right now. Not in another lifetime or in 10 lifetimes, but now. As it's seen and felt and listened to and understood. My way and your way, and the collision of those two ways. If I don't attach to my way, what will we collide over? If I'm not attached to an image of myself, what will get hurt? I can hear the irritation or anger in someone else's voice. One can hear. But there's nothing within that reverberates and wants to defend itself or lash back. There's just the listening to an angry or irritated, intense voice. If I don't insist that my way is the right way and the attachment to it, the holding on to it, because if I don't hold on to my way, then somebody will bowl me over. Then what am I? A doormat. If all of these thoughts aren't there, no attachment to it, just interest, and let's work something out. Then what collides? There's nothing to collide with. And instead of an old conditioned reaction, the habit of that, the momentum of our conditioned reactions, instead of that, the energy is free to look and look intelligently. Discern what is going on with intelligence, which is not conditioned intelligence, but the intelligence of free looking, free listening, free questioning. And the lovingness that goes with that, when there is nothing to defend. Because there's nothing held on to, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Somebody said, off and on this question comes up, it's come up quite frequently over the past weeks. How do you know that we're all connected? How do you know that we're all alike, similar? A person recently in this retreat said, I feel so different. My approach to things is different. My perceptions are different from others. My needs are different from others. I don't feel that we are so similar. I feel quite isolated. I hear you say that all human beings are so much alike. How do you know that? You haven't talked to everybody. It's true. I haven't talked to everybody. This just occurs right now, I never thought of this before, the whole science, mathematical science of statistics, rests on representative samples, but I'm not sure that the people that we meet are representative samples, and I'm not sure that the statisticians meet representative samples either. But leaving that aside, are we different or are we similar? Because based on this understanding that we're all very similar, much more similar than different, an amazing thing happens in understanding oneself, being intimate with how anger arises or fear comes about, being familiar and intimate as it arises, seeing it, understanding it. One understands fear and anger in human beings. It's not just my personal anger and fear that I understand. What's understood is anger, fear, which has its personal shadings for each human being. But anger is anger, fear is fear. whether it happens here or in South Africa or in China or with the Eskimos. We're physiologists, research people who work with a human body tell us as even though each individual organism is unique, there's no two of them that are completely like, yet the way the heart pumps or the liver works or the respiration operates, the muscles work, that's universal. We all have a brain which has evolved over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And this brain, which we all share in a way, is not just mine and yours and his and hers and us, ours and theirs. This brain that we share makes thought possible. All human beings think. I don't think anyone doubts that fact. All human beings, endowed with the same kind of brain and the functions that a brain makes possible, all human beings think. Thinking meaning not just seeing a tree or a lion or a fruit, but remembering. Meaning the memory can respond and thoughts coming out of memories. One can remember the things one ate, one remembers also one's own experiences. One looks into a puddle and sees the reflection of this body. And one can remember that. One hears remarks about oneself, you're good, you're bad, you're nice, you're talented, you're stupid. And that can be stored in the brain. And the thoughts from that memory come up at any time. So not only do we remember things that we see and hear, but we can remember ourselves as being somebody, an image. The body feel, the body image. The attributes given to us through words by others. We can think about ourselves. That is universally true for all human beings, because we all have this brain that makes possible not just to think, but also to think about thought. Not only to remember images, but to think about these images. To spin out stories about them. To create a continuity by remembering, a continuity of the past. It can only happen if the brain is able to do that for us. To produce continuous series of remembered pictures and string them together in the story of my life, the life of my family, my nation, my race, my civilization, my social class, my religious group. And then the attachment to these stories, to these images. Attachment meaning, the moment I think about it, I may get a warm, secure, or cold and threatening feeling. So things that give me a warm feeling, a boost of energy, I like to think about again and again. My lover, my family, my nation. and things that have threatening connotations, my enemies, if I think of them, I'm afraid or feel belligerent. All of this can take place just by thinking. And this is true for all human beings. We all think. We all remember. We all act from memory. And we can all think about ourselves, past, present, and future. There's something else that thought produces for all human beings, because it comes out of the same functioning brain. The past through memory, the future through projecting what is remembered into what we call the future. Thinking about ourselves as this collection of remembered images, impressions, experiences, this aggregate of collection of memory, we can think about that continuing into the future. All human beings do that. And imagine things that will happen to us in the future, based on what has happened to us in the past, or what we would like to happen in the future. So we share this image making and the attachment to image making with all human beings. And with the attachment to the image of ourselves, of necessity, experiment with this, find it out in yourself. With the attachment to the image of oneself goes fear. Fear for that image, based on past hurts, projected into the future. There's fear in probably almost all human beings. There's fear. There is fear when there's attachment to self-image. It can't be otherwise. Self-image is not stable. It's a collection of memories. Very vulnerable to be hurt, to be put down, to be offended, or to be flattered. Self-image is flattered. This is where we gravitate toward, like moths toward the light. We gravitate toward where our self-image is made feel good. Not condemning this, we're just looking at it. And it's for each one to verify for oneself, or to say, no, this isn't so, and then we'll discuss it. I may be wrong. So with the attachment to self-image, which is possible through this whole process of thinking, goes fear. Fear of loss. Not just attachment to self-image, attachment to all kinds of images. Image of our parents, lovers, family, friends. Attachment to the image. And then thinking, I may lose this person. This person may leave me. And the inevitable fear. So do we see that with these thought processes that are made possible by the human brain, which has evolved over thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years, with the capacity to think and to think about thought, comes attachment and fear. And much more. The possibility for the pleasure afforded by thought. To think pleasurable thoughts about what happened or what could have happened or what could happen in the future. and the attachment to this pleasure afforded by thoughts, which we call dreaming, fantasizing. Or we may not be aware that it's a dream. When we're caught up in a dream, it seems so real, because our whole body responds to these thoughts, these pleasurable thoughts. The body answers or responds in kind with its organismic feelings, emotions. And that is also universally true, because there is the same brain that can provide thought that provides pleasure, that brings attachment to that, wanting it again. We could go on and on. There's the feeling of fear for myself. In thought, we're not talking about an actual danger. When there's an actual danger, right now, confronted with a danger, the brain usually doesn't indulge in fantasy. There's direct seeing and direct action. Taking flight or taking an action, it is often amazingly accurate. But at such a moment in which a danger is seen clearly, and the seeing being the acting, the accurate action taken, at such moments, in reflecting about it afterwards, one realizes one wasn't even afraid. There was just tremendous energy to respond. So I'm wondering whether the fear that we're projecting upon animals, so often said, poor animals, they have to live in such fear of each other, being eaten up, caught, killed. I'm not so sure that animals live in the constant fear that we human beings do. Because they respond to what's there, underfoot, under their nose, or right under their mouth, or eyes. They don't think about possible dangers. When the danger approaches, they act, they run or attack. So we're not talking about immediacy of danger. That doesn't, unless one feels paralyzed, there is this occurrence too, paralyzed with thought, what's going to happen to me. Then there's no seeing, and then there's fear. Pictures. I'm going to get killed, I'm going to get burned, it's going to be this or that. But when thought isn't activated, but seeing and action, there's no fear. But we don't usually deal with direct, immediate danger. We are caught up in imagined dangers, imagined hurt, imagined pain. The fear of imagining oneself being abandoned or lonesome. Imagining that nobody loves one. That one may die without being taken care of. Out of these fears that are produced in human beings through the activity of thought, out of these fears we build belief systems in gods and saviors and bodhisattvas, and future salvation or future damnation. And we cling to these beliefs. That's also universally true. There are belief systems in every human society. Because human beings everywhere are afraid of what their thought produces. So if one understands or begins to get glimpses, insights into all of this happening in oneself, the need for a belief, the need for a person to believe in, to guide one, to tell one, I know, just follow me, I will take care of you. If one begins to understand this and watch it, see it in oneself, then out of that blossoms an understanding for all human beings. And a deep feeling of kinship. Closeness, not isolation. One may see that how isolated all human beings feel and understand where this isolation comes from, this feeling of isolation. And when there is this understanding, out of that comes compassion. Not pity for others, but compassion. That's different. It's not an emotion. It's a deep feeling and understanding on how we get trapped in the mechanisms of our own minds and bodies. Pleasurable ones and frightful ones. And one begins to wonder deeply whether this has to be this way, whether this is inevitably so. Our nature, human nature, one will put aside all of those assumptions. One will wonder whether it is inevitably so and not have any conclusions about it, but remain open to looking. What happens in oneself in relationship with each other. And maybe talk with each other about it. Explore it together. There's a tremendous energy that comes with that, which is different from all drummed up energy through entertainment or whatever we use to drum up energy. Or I'm not talking against entertainment. But the energy of getting together and exploring together and having insight into ourselves, and with that insight maybe a freeing from all of this bondage. Somebody just said that, I think it was this morning, we were looking at something, and the person says, why do I feel so released right now? I feel great release. Something was seen, probably. So the truth about something that operates in us. And if that's seen as great release and joy that cannot be matched, Somebody asked this question in a first meeting. How do I talk to other people about what I'm doing here? I don't seem to be able to do that very well. I often can't put it into words. But this may be just thinking one can't put it into words. If two people get together and really are interested in finding out what is going on, with anything, what is going on, interested to find out together, then if one really looks and looks again and realizes this isn't clear and therefore questions and looks and listens, then words do come. What's important is the looking and the listening. When something is clear, then there will be a word. It may not be the best, and one may chuck it and use another one. That's why it's so important if something isn't understood, isn't clear, or doesn't seem to be right this way, then please, let's talk about it. Say, I didn't understand those words, or they didn't seem to be quite the right words. All right, well, put all old words aside and see if we can find new words, but what we need to do is look. Not just argue on a verbal level. We can do that too, and there's some fun in that, but it doesn't go deep. We will end here for today.